Welcome to the Wasteland, the post-apocalyptic barren dust bowl that not only houses some of the most cursed creatures, interesting characters, and a pretty solid TV show, but also one of the best gaming franchises of all time, that being Fallout. And I actually have never played a single title until today, where I decided to go headfirst into this series and play every single title there is, including the beloved DLC. I crowned one game the best in the franchise with the S ranking, and another the worst in the franchise with the F. Since I'm brand new to this franchise, I had no pre-existing opinions going into this, that meaning I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers along the way. So go ahead and comment your favorite and least favorite Fallout game down below as we get started. Fallout, a post-nuclear role-playing game, is the first entry in the franchise, as Interplay Entertainment kicked things off. As you can see, this game just looks a lot different than the normal Fallout experience you're probably used to, and it is also night and day in the way that it is played. Releasing in 1997, the easiest way to explain this game is if you didn't play it upon release, you simply just had to be there. Giving you one of the best intros to any Fallout game has to offer, detailing everything before the Fallout. You play as the Vault Dweller that's set on a mission to get a new water chip before your entire water supply is depleted and your entire vault dies. And I hope you're ready to do tons of homework, research, and prerequisites before even booting up this game, because holy shit, is it hard. Maybe hard's not the right word for it, but this game just does not hold your hand in any which way. And this is also back in the day where, you know, gaming manuals were a big part of how you've been played or learned the game. I can't remember the last time I actually looked at a guide on how to play a single player game, but you absolutely have to do it if you're doing this in 2025 and have never played a game like this before. Because I hope you're ready to analyze every last micro pixel in this game, because it doesn't tell you what a certain thing is. You know, a little like vase could hold like a key item that you could just easily mark as like some background art for the game. No, like pretty much every single piece of like anything in this game is interactable. Basically, if you ever play Dungeons and Dragons, think of it as playing Dungeons and Dragons but in a virtual setting. This is just how RPGs were played back then, and you know, I'm gonna piss people off here, but it just does not age well. There's just no way that anyone who didn't grow up playing this game has come back to it like, yeah, this is my favorite Fallout game. Like, you are just lying. I don't think people don't like this game. I think if you're gonna play it, just be ready to lock the in. Anyways, you're cut free at the start, and this cave with the rad scorpions is a tutorial level, I guess you could call it, and you're introduced to the VAT system, which functions very similarly as it does in later games. It's a much more fundamental part of the game, with things like even accessing your inventory and base movement being tied to your action points, which definitely takes a lot of getting used to. It's almost like, you know, playing a game of chess. You're kind of just waiting to see what the AI does, and then you respond to it, whether that be just move a couple places out of the way to increase their like distance away you are from them, so they're less likely to hit you with their shot, or move closer to them so you're more likely to hit them with your melee, you know, things like that. Whereas before, you know, in modern RPGs, you're just moving around freely, you know, aside from turn-based RPGs. Anyways, aside from having no idea what the fuck you're doing and what the fuck you need to be doing at any given time, it's really cool to see how much depth this game has to offer. The speech is pretty diverse, and there's even an open text option to ask anyone about anything. And as someone who's now played every single game in the franchise, seeing Bethesda take this delicate franchise, and I think they preserved it pretty well. As a casual from the outside, playing this game, it's kind of like, oh wow, like you would almost think that Bethesda, it was the same company that made this game. You know, maybe not exactly, but pretty damn good job at the very least. Because I know that's one thing people always shit on Bethesda. They lost the plot for Fallout, and I really just don't see that. The love-hate feature in this game has to be the random encounters when traveling. Sometimes it'll be something similar like, oh, a pack of mole rats, or, you know, a couple raiders. Other times it's like, you know, the Brotherhood of Steel, or, you know, just like someone who is, you are going to die. You will just have a random encounter where you can't do anything. They get the first shot, and it's always going to be an insta-kill. I think they do this around parts where you're not supposed to be at a low level, so I guess that's kind of why. But I hope you're ready to do a lot of backtracking, because this game exclusively runs off the save feature, and there is no autosave back in 1997, so you had to like spam your saves. And I learned this the hard way. You know, I probably had like a solid 45 minutes of gameplay before I died for the first time, and then, you know, had to restart from the very beginning. The very beginning, you know, I got the whole opening cutscene and all. There is a fun side to the whole random encounter thing. I one time was just minding my own business, and there was a chest of like 9,000 caps ready to go. Literally just, I didn't have to fight anyone. I just got it, and then I continued on my way. So that's kind of cool. But, you know, there would be times it's just like, oh, I guess I just die here. And that felt a little annoying. Anyways, I personally didn't enjoy this game because I just wasn't there for it. I didn't experience these kind of games growing up. You know, I think the best part about these games is exploring the world and talking to people. And, you know, there is tons of different interactions you can have with people. I mean, the speech is honestly more complex than it is in the later Fallouts. So I give kudos to that. You know, this is a really great world building experience. If you have the patience, you know, maybe give it a try. I think the next game we're going to talk about is a little more user-friendly for a few reasons. But I think a TLDR video on this game, or, you know, watching someone else play it, is almost a little more appropriate because you get that lore and that immersion that is kind of hard to feel when you're actually playing it sometimes. A very controversial seed here for the very first Fallout game. Fallout 2 takes the exact same gameplay loop from Fallout 1, but I think this game is straight up better. Aside from an even more tedious start than Fallout 1, being this whole like tribal trial thing you do in this temple, which was insanely annoying, and again, just like no direction. There's no way you're making it through this without looking up at least like some type of guide or like a walkthrough. But once you're cut loose, it's similar. You get the whole world to explore at, you know, in any order and in any which way you please. And I really liked this. I felt like after you get past the tutorial world, you have a lot more to do and not just randomly dying like you would in Fallout 1. Maybe it's because I had already played Fallout 1 before this, so I was, I guess, conditioned to the gameplay of this, but I really enjoyed my time with Fallout 2. Well, at least a lot more than I did with Fallout 1. Still, not my type of game, you know, turn-based, simulated combat, kind of not my jam, as you've seen with other videos I've made. But I really like the story in this one because it actually directly ties to Fallout 1, which as far as I know, there's not another, you know, direct sequel to a game like there is with this in any of the other Fallout games. You're basically part of a tribe that worships the Vault Dweller, and then you get his tunic and, you know, you kind of just like follow his footsteps. But your tribe needs a Gek, and this woman who's totally off the wasteland, you know, OG here. Like, what? This is just a straight up bong, right? I mean, bro, this is just like a blatant loud pack. What the fuck else is this supposed to be? I don't think there's much to be said that's already been said about the first game, other than it's kind of easier to fuck up your build in this game. And like, I had to redo my build because I didn't put enough into melee. And if you don't, like, you literally just can't get past this whole temple tribal thing. There's so many fun interactions and fun places to go. And like, I don't know why, but Fallout 1 and 2 kind of remind me of like the houses and like the architecture remind me of like Tatooine in a really weird way. Ironically enough, I think if you're gonna play one of these games, I think you should start with 2, and then if you can get it through this, or like at least somehow enjoy it, then, you know, go back to 1 and see what it's all about. But 2 is just flat out better. I still don't exactly love these games, but they are still very important. Obviously, without it, we would not have any of what's to come, and I give this a B tier. Fallout Tactics is the first of a handful of spin-off games on this list, and this is still developed by Interplay and seems like a much more linear playstyle in the form of missions rather than an open world. You play as a new recruit for the Brotherhood of Steel, and you have your own character, but then also control other characters, which in turn makes this game play more like an RTS game and heavily emphasizes on the combat side of things rather than exploring any type of story. Also, R. Lee Ermey is a voice actor in this game. RIP. To put in how much of a story or quests or any world exploring there is to do in this game, 1, it is linear, but 2, there isn't even a speech like trait in this game. Matter of fact, there's no involvement with any type of NPC or any type of dialogue whatsoever, which to me doesn't feel like an RPG at all. I know this is a spin-off game, but this is just a bad game. Really bad game. Controlling multiple characters just does not work well for Fallout, aside from maybe when it comes to companions, but you're not really controlling them. In turn, they wanted to make this game more like a Command and Conquer, like Red Alert or something, but I also don't like those games, so this one did not hit well for me either. And also, to be fair, I don't think the combat from the first 2 games was exactly thrilling enough to make a whole game based on that. The combat in 1 and 2 was almost like a very minute detail. It's much more about exploring, and there is none of that in this. I think if you're gonna flat out skip any game in the Fallout franchise, it for sure has to be this one. I wanted to cut it some slack because it's a spin-off, but I mean, I'm gonna hold it to the same standard as every other game on this list. This is an F tier, the worst game in the franchise. A lot of people say that Bethesda was the one that lost the plot when it comes to Fallout, but I would argue that Interplay lost the plot when it comes to Fallout. And that's for the sole reason that Fallout Brotherhood of Steel for the PS2 exists. Buckle up, because this game's fucking weird. But before I get into that, I want to reiterate here that I had never played any Fallout game before this, so this was kind of just another video game to play. You know, I didn't have any like, oh man, I really hope that this Fallout game has this in it, or, you know, it doesn't have this. So this is just a random video game as far as I'm concerned. And to be fair, it kind of just feels like that anyways. The game kicks off with this Alice in Chains ass intro that I was honestly kind of all in on.
Out of nowhere, an army of giants called mutants appeared. They slaughtered many people and altered many more to add to their numbers.
And you play as a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, once again, as you sort of mindlessly mash buttons with a very loose RPG element in the form of a skill tree sprinkled within the game. This is basically like any other hack and slash PS2 game, which was dominating, you know, this whole early 2000s era. I think, you know, Interplay maybe was fresh out of ideas and was like, how do we capitalize this and also kind of tap into the console market side of things? Because, you know, Fallout hadn't been on consoles until this very moment. And I mean, yeah, it kind of sucked. For starters, this camera angle is just awful. It is like so almost kind of nauseating to play. I don't know why they didn't go with kind of like the loose third-person camera that other games were doing at the time. Or better yet, maybe even a fixed camera would have done better for this. But another big problem was this game was extremely easy, aside from maybe the occasional boss fight. I played as Kane here, who's a ghoul, which, a side note, was pretty cool. I don't know if you can play as a ghoul in any other Fallout game. But I sort of went for this melee build, if you want to even consider builds being in this game whatsoever. And I mean, it was just spam button, you know, find better weapon, you know, sell things, buy things. It was very easy. It felt like the skill tree was almost irrelevant. It was basically just increasing your base stats throughout the whole entire game. It wasn't like, oh, I got this new ability that lets me hit 2 people at once or something like that. It was always just gonna gradually increase the damage you're doing or the health you take or the critical chance. That was all it was just sliders, essentially. It's a very forgettable experience and for sure not good, but I do think it gets very overhated by the Fallout community based off what I read through some forums. You know, I think, again, they were just trying almost too hard to appeal to console markets by making it A, super easy, and B, like, basically shouldn't even have the RPG elements in the game whatsoever. I think they were just making this for, like, actual toddlers. There's also just way, way, way better games out in this time that did the same genre of the hack and slash way better. I mean, just stick to your Lord of the Rings and the Two Towers or the Return of the King game, because this game is a D tier. For many, this is their first experience with Fallout, and also happened to be their favorite. With Bethesda getting their mitts on the Fallout IP, this was the first 3D game, well, I guess maybe not, which took all those RPG elements you had in the first 2 games, but gave them a much more immersive experience. Taking you from the perspective of a born and raised vault dweller on the quest to hunt down your mysterious father and discover his own motives within the wasteland, you're thrown to the wolves as you traverse the capital wasteland in any which way you please. I fucking loved this game. You're cut loose roughly 30 to 45 minutes into the game, but I actually found that doing the main quest for a good bit was my course of action for a few reasons. One, I fucking sucked at this game starting out. I was just dying to everything I tried to encounter. Oh, that's a landmine. So I needed to just, you know, let the game do its thing and teach me how to play, because I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. You know, I didn't really know that, like, how to repair things or what order to do VATS in or when to even use VATS. I was kind of just playing this like Skyrim, and this does not play like Skyrim whatsoever. To me, as an outsider, again, I was always like, oh, Fallout is just Skyrim, but with, you know, the whole post-apocalyptic thing. Obviously, also, I know that Fallout 3 came way before Skyrim. Chill the fuck out. Anyways, I was struggling pretty hard with this game, so much so that I maybe have used a couple console commands to generate a couple stim packs in the first 4 hours of my game.
Skill issue.
But at that 3 or 4 hour mark, I don't know what happened or what changed, but it just clicked, and I was fucking hooked. The leveling up, the barter, speech, lockpicking, side quests. It all came together so clearly and created the best RPG experience I think I've ever had. You have unforgettable creatures like the ghouls, the Yaogwai, and the holy fuck shit your pants, the centaur. What the fuck is this thing? I have pretty thick skin when it comes to kind of like yucky shit, but holy fuck, this thing is so cursed and like the most uncomfortable thing I think I've ever looked at in a video game. Also, here's my first experience with the Deathclaw. Wait, is that a Deathclaw?
Uh-oh. Wait.
Oh no. It is. Oh! You get an idea of what the ambience of Fallout is known for with the legendary soundtracks. It weirdly meshes that 40s and 50s music playing as the most desolate things are occurring before your very eyes. It's a widely debated what game has the best soundtrack, but I think they're all just fire. And that's all I'm going to talk about soundtracks. I know you could go in depth in every game, but you know, you get a good idea with Fallout 3, and you could argue it only gets better as it goes on, as far as soundtracks go. With the newfound confidence and enjoyment I had found, I ended up quickly beating the main story, which was pretty short and sweet, which seems to be a reoccurring thing with Bethesda games as far as the main quest goes. But then I started to dive deeper into what this game had to offer, and I was just mind blown. Tenpenny Towers, Paradise Falls, the Underground Metro, the motherfucking fucking super duper marked. But where this game really knocked my socks off with how much fun you can have with it is its DLC. And I gotta say, this was by far my favorite stretch of this whole entire video, was playing each Fallout 3 DLC. I don't know if there's necessarily a right or wrong order to play these in, but I'll just run through the order that I played them in. I think the first one I attempted to do was Point Lookout, but quickly realized I was not good enough for that at the level I tried to do it at. We'll go ahead and talk about it anyway, since I did do like a decent amount of the, or you know, at least like maybe half of it before I just completely got soft locked, or not, maybe not soft locked, but just could not progress because I was not good enough. It takes a Halloween haunted house, like Friday the 13th approach that works very well and introduces all sorts of new characters and enemies, like the inbred swamp folk that feel like they're ripped straight from Texas Chainsaw. I also found this is one of the more compelling stories. You know, it kind of gets, at first you think, oh, like there's like these two factions against each other, like, and then it gets way deeper than that, and kind of like you get a cool little history lesson of Point Lookout and what it's been like even before. And it kind of has this pretty wild twist that is actually pretty clever. And I think this is what a lot of people have in mind when they think of single player DLC. Take you to a new location and make that location like pretty in-depth, you know, don't have much blank space, just make it a whole jam-packed experience. Maybe add a new aesthetic to it. This was, you know, the whole carnival theme vibe going on here. And throw in a couple new guns and characters and you're good to go. And this is what Point Lookout is. It's a solid DLC. My only complaint is that I went here at a low level and it costs 400 to go to and from there, 400 caps. And since I got there, I realized I couldn't progress it anymore because I sucked. So I had to spend 400 caps to go back. So, which at the time I was playing was, it kind of seemed like a lot more caps than what it felt like. But then there's Operation Anchorage, which is a really simple DLC that puts you in a simulation of the war that led up to the bombs being dropped. This was one I wish, unlike Point Lookout, I did at a very early point in the game, because you get some pretty kick-ass armor and then just a ton of guns. It's just a really solid A to B linear DLC. Kind of a, it feels just like a placeholder, just like you rank up your XP, and the gameplay is just basically like Call of Duty 2. Like if you're playing like an old Call of Duty campaign mission, that's Operation Anchorage. And again, as an outsider, I f***ed at that. Some people hate that, but it was enjoyable for me. Then there's Broken Steel, which without having this DLC, I believe the game ends when you beat it. But with this installed, there's an entire post-game alongside the Brotherhood of Steel, and that was actually my least favorite of the 5. Not to say it's a bad thing. You know, we're talking about some really heavy hitters here, and this one just kind of felt like more of the main story. I think this one also did raise the level cap to 30, which is very relevant because I kind of, you know, you hit level 30 naturally playing this game, but getting stopped at 20 would have really sucked. Then there's Mothership Zeta, which for whatever reason, everybody fucking hates this. I guess maybe it's distasteful for the whole Fallout thing getting aliens involved and them abducting you, and it is kind of corny. You're just walking out and then you just get sucked up. But I thought it was pretty fun. You know, you're just trying to escape the ship, and then the part where you meet the other people who got kidnapped but are also Cairo freeze, you know, in time, including one person who you fought alongside during Operation Anchorage. That's pretty sick. It is another very linear experience. You're just running around the ship trying to escape, and you get some pretty fucking broken guns, but I think as far as I know, the ammo is limited. It's only what you get on the ship, so I think that's a good way to balance it, but they are pretty fun and also very ridiculous. Then there's the Pit, which like Point Lookout takes you to an entirely new and separate place on the map, being Pittsburgh. This is another fan favorite, and I can totally see why. You're caught in this whole slave and dictatorship. Each DLC introduces a ton of exclusive loot, and this one, if you however much of a collector you want to be, you can just collect all these steel ingots and get some crazy shit every like 5 or something. You also get the ammo crafting thing, which was also pretty nice. There's no other way to craft ammo except for in the pit. Anyways, enough about the DLC. Let's get back to the base game, which takes the very depressing and dark and gloomy vibe to it, which obviously fits the post-apocalypse thing. It first made the game hard to enjoy because it was actually hard to physically see things, but you realize that this game really sold you on the bleak and depressing lifestyle that you're surrounded by. I went for a small guns, energy guns, and melee build, which is probably the most basic if I had to guess. I mean, at least to me, it just seemed like the most natural one, you know, as far as the things I was picking up early on. I was like, all right, I'm just going to try and max these things out. But what I liked about leveling up in this game is you really don't feel like you're tied down to a specific build. You get to such a high level that basically everything you do is really good, and the perks, like in leveling up system, is so good in this. I loved it so much. And by the end of the game, you are just completely unstoppable. As far as other complaints I have, I guess you could maybe complain about the mini-map markers. I know if you have 2 objectives at the same time, they'll show you both of them, but you don't know which is one. Like maybe you have a decision to make and it's like talk to this person or talk to this person. It just has 2 markers and you don't know which marker belongs to which person. Just a nitpick, and I'm sure there's mods that fix that. And I guess if you're a full-fledged fucking idiot like me, the beginning of the game is kind of not very user-friendly or beginner-friendly. You kind of have to just suffer through it for like an hour or two before you start making things make sense. And then the performance, holy shit, the performance of this game fucking blows. At least on my computer, you know, it's the tale as old as time, where the older the PC game and the newer the actual system it's running on, the worse that they communicate with each other. And I had so many issues. It crashed all the time, and if I ever clicked out of my game from full screen mode, it would just guaranteed crash. So that was pretty annoying, but you kind of just learn to deal with it. And once again, I feel like there's mods to fix that. But other than that, I'll go as far to say that this game is perfect. This is the S tier for the video. Not to bore you with the details on the development behind New Vegas, but a quick history lesson or reminder, because probably all of you already know this. Former members of Interplay, the folks behind Fallout 1, went on to start Obsidian. Bethesda wanted to make a sequel to Fallout 3, but offhanded the project to Obsidian, which is made up of original Interplay devs, to in turn make another Fallout game made by the people who made Fallout. Anyways, as the title suggests, we're taking to Las Vegas, which was somewhat untouched in the grand scheme of things compared to the majority of the country. And instead of being a vault dweller, you're the courier who took a job gone wrong as you hunt down Benny, the man responsible for your attempted assassination. A couple of key differences in the start of the game compared to Fallout 3, one of which being the traits. The way to describe these is kind of like perma perks that drastically change, you know, minor things about the game, and you know, you can't have one, and if you have one, you won't be able to take another. It's a really cool feature. I read over Logan's loophole trait that starts and keeps you at level 30 for the entire game, and in and of itself sounds like a very interesting way to play the game. Another obvious observation is that you're not playing from a vault dweller, you're starting the game from the top, and as far as you know, the courier's always been on the top, which is a new unique perspective that we didn't have in Fallout 3. The game itself is much brighter in comparison to Fallout 3, but still holds on to that bleak, empty, and depressing wasteland, which is further emphasized by this game taking place on a literal desert. Anyways, unlike Fallout 3, this game also cuts you loose like 5 minutes after the first cutscene. And as far as I'm concerned, kind of like the first two games, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. Whereas Fallout 3, there was probably like at least 30 to 45 minutes of guaranteed main story you had to complete. I'm not sure if it was my idiot, dumb brain maturing overnight, or me actually having a grasp on what the fuck was going on this time around, but I grinded the living shit out of the side quests of this game. Basically, completed most of the side quests before I got even like halfway through the main quest, which granted is still pretty short in this game too. One of the most memorable early ones I had done was Come Fly With Me, where you discover a group of ghouls that are afraid of the basement being this nightkin, and then you clear out the nightkin, and then they task you to find these parts for these rockets and then fly to the fucking moon. This was like an hour into the game, and I was just like, oh shit, this is already just off to a banger start. When you send a group of like cultist ghouls to the moon in the first hour of the game, it kind of felt like this should be part of some spin-off DLC, but no, this is just how unhinged New Vegas gets. The main quest is a vengeance story that turns into you getting involved with every single faction in New Vegas, which we can go ahead and talk about that. This game takes the whole faction system and, well, I mean, just creates it, because when you consider Fallout 3, there basically was just like the Enclave, the Brotherhood of Steel, and I guess Raiders. I don't know, but there's way more going on. In New Vegas, you have your classic Raiders, Brotherhood of Steel like you did before, but now there's the NCR, Mr. House, the Great Khans, Boomers, Van Graffs, Kings, and of course Caesar's Legion. Or is it Kaiser? Bro, I swear they were saying like both of the names. I don't know which one's canon, which one's not. I feel like they flip between the two, and someone was really pissed at one of my friends. I said Caesar in Discord, and they were like, don't you mean Kaiser? Like, they were just being such a fucking virgin about it. Anyways, this will become a focal point of the game, because with each faction, you build a different reputation, and helping one faction might decrease your reputation with that faction. And with these reputations, it dictates how this game ends. Whichever factions you're cool with and not cool with, that is the ending you get, which makes this game already way more replayable than it is to begin with. To be honest, I think there's almost too many endings, because towards the end of the game, you are just overwhelmed with a shit ton of quests, and it's like, fuck, which one am I gonna do? And like, it's a little confusing, to be fair, but then I had to look it up. I had to talk to my friends. I was like, what the fuck is all this? Like, I had to know. I wanted to make sure what I was doing was what I actually wanted to be doing. Anyways, compare the whole faction system to the karma system in Fallout 3, and it is night and day. They're not even comparable, honestly. What I really like about these factions is that none of them are perfect. You're not gonna like everything one faction stands for, except, you know, maybe there's like Caesar's is like inherently evil, if you want to put it that way, but each one has their flaws, and you got to really pick and choose which one you want to help and which one you don't, which I feel like in a lot of other games, it's objectively good, objectively bad, but not in New Vegas. The Boomers, who just want the right to bear arms but will kill anyone who approaches their compound, even if you're harmless. Then there's the Great Khans, who sling a little dope and get the whole Mojave fent walking. There are some other notable gameplay differences, like the ability to actually aim down sights, breaking down ammo you don't need to then craft ammo you do need, being able to modify weapons with new attachments like magazines, compensators, and scopes, and even small quality of life aspects like breakdown of damage per second instead of damage output, and warnings like when you're about to start a DLC DLC, it tells you straight up that you're probably not high enough level to be doing so, but if you really want to, you can go ahead. Wish I knew that before I dropped 1200 caps on Point Lookout. Speaking of, let's go ahead and talk DLC. My personal favorite being Honest Heart, which takes you to Zion National Park as you're caught in the middle of a tribal war as your entire party that came with you is slaughtered upon arrival. You meet Joshua Graham, who's a fan favorite character in their series, and for good reason. He just reloads the same pistol for 12 hours a day. Bad fucking ass. As someone who's been to Zion National Park multiple times in my life, I can say this is just a perfect setting for a Fallout, and it's actually one of the only places in the whole entire franchise that actually feels totally untouched, aside from like, it's like the mutants and shit. But you know, you got like clean drinking water and preserved nature, sorta. I enjoyed the aesthetic of this one, but also just the overall tribe and war vibe it had. It gave me my favorite pistol in the game, being a light and shining darkness, but it does leave a little sour taste in your mouth because once you complete the DLC, there's basically no reason to go back to it at all. You have the main story. There's like 3 quests that aren't part of the main quest of the DLC, so that was kind of a bummer. But then there's Dead Money. This DLC. So far, I've been glazing New Vegas, and I really loved this game, but you would think I'd give it, you know, a higher ranking than Fallout 3 so far. But then I played this DLC, and holy shit, this has totally warped or like just left a terrible taste in my mouth with my New Vegas experience. Dead Money takes you to the lame-ass Sierra Madre Casino, where you're basically performing a heist for Elijah, and this DLC is known for being hard, which I'm sure a lot of people love a good challenge, but this is like so unbelievably difficult. At least for my build and my playthrough and my playstyle, I guess, but this was so miserable to get through. And this is one of those DLCs that, you guessed it, you cannot go back until you complete it. And it's like 5 or 6 hours, but I probably cut that down to like 3 or 4, probably 4, because I was just avoiding everything, trying to go to A to B to get this thing done as fast as I fucking could. The whole time you hear you have a dog collar around your neck that is responsive to radioactive activity, being like radios or other pieces of technology that explodes if you get too close to it for too long. And this is like, it's not like, oh, the first 30 minutes of it, then you get it off. No, this is the whole time you're here. Actually, technically, when you leave, you still have it on while you're in the wasteland afterwards, which is ridiculous. It doesn't have the same effect, but kind of crazy that this thing actually just never leaves you the rest of the game. But holy shit, was it a mechanic that was fucking unbearable. On top of that, you're stripped of all your belongings and given a dinky little energy rifle. There's booby traps everywhere, very limited heals, and it's kind of scary. The story is very interesting, but I swear I hated every fucking minute of this DLC, even if there was a somewhat compelling story. It was so hard to get through, and definitely another
skill issue.
Like I said, I was running past all the enemies, which I hate doing because enemies are, you know, just easy way to farm XP, but I was not having it with this. You know, you got to take your 3 companions and get them to the Sierra Madre, and then you can decide what to do with them after. I'll leave it at that. The only somewhat saving grace is that there is a decent payout at the end, but is kind of like a dick tease, all things considered, because you don't really get to fully enjoy it. But yeah, I learned my lesson the hard way that you can't return from this until you're finished with it. And I know for a fact, I will never play Dead Money again in my entire life. And I definitely plan on replaying New Vegas, but I will not be playing this DLC ever again. Old World Blues is a sort of a comedic take on DLC despite having some serious circumstances. You're kidnapped by scientists that have programmed their likeness with machines and steal your brain and spine and task you to take down Dr. Mobius. When I mean machines, I mean like sinks and like toasters and shit. This whole DLC was kind of like a collectathon, and that seems to be the theme there because each of those like AI people thing, you can go and collect specific like random items like trinkets to bring to them, and they'll reward you with stuff. But it is a much more light-hearted story because it's just very funny. I would just say silly and a little more whimsical maybe. But you do end with probably my favorite boss fight in the game, and the option to keep or replace your synthetic spine and brain that each had their own respective traits associated with them. People also say this is the best one like ever. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I did really enjoy it. Lastly, we have Lonesome Road, which is a very linear experience that takes you through the Great Divide as you're met with the original courier who declined the job of transferring the platinum chip in the first place. This one's pretty standard, but I will say the very end of this has probably the best payoff of any DLC or like any story really. I mean, you're left with a decision that drastically changes the rest of the game, and you don't really see that with other DLCs in Fallout. I really appreciated that. New Vegas was a phenomenal time and an excellent follow-up to Fallout 3 if you exclude Dead Money. I hate that I had to play this. I mean, genuinely, fuck, I know I'm just bitching and complaining so hard right now, but fuck this DLC. It took it down. Like, that was enough to make it not as good as Fallout 3, in my opinion. All I'm trying to say is I don't think I've ever had a phenomenal game have a 5-hour period of time where I actually hated every single minute of it. You will not change my mind about this DLC. Even with dead money, this game is still a masterpiece. Maybe that's what New Vegas was subliminally going for when you think about this game having a hardcore mode. This is where everything's much harder and comes to the whole healing and realism side of thing. And that's just not for me, and maybe that's why dead money's not for me either. Regardless, this is still a phenomenal game. I loved every minute minus 5 hours of it, and this is an A tier experience. Time for Fallout Shelter, which, as much as it pains me to say, out of all the games I've played on here, by the time my life is over, I think I'm probably gonna have the most hours on this bullshit-ass game. Also, disclaimer, I fully played this game on my phone, so the footage you're seeing is not mine. Early 2010s, it was the whole era of, like, Simpsons Tapped Out and Clash of Clans, I guess, too, where, you know, the micromanaging simulator where you min-max every living fucking attribute about your world or whatever it is. And Bethesda thought they'd take a crack at it with Fallout Shelter, and all I gotta say is that they fucking got me. Yeah, it sucks how much of a grip this game has on me. I get the notifications and I'm on my phone. It's fucking awful, but so fucking good too. Within the context of being a mobile game, this probably is an S-tier mobile game, but I would not put that in the same conversation as New Vegas or even like Fallout 2. So this is getting a C tier, even though I want to put it higher, and I probably shouldn't have included it in the first place, but yeah, that's where we stand. Now on to the most divisive game in the franchise, being Fallout 4. Sporting a much brighter and vibrant aesthetic than any other game in the franchise, you're playing as a pre-war vault dweller who witnessed his son kidnapped and wife executed. As you're then cryo-freeze for 200 years, wake up to find your son and his kidnappers. Sound familiar? This game reworked the 3D formula that had been established with the previous two titles and was met with a lot of controversy. I'm just gonna go ahead and speedrun some of those changes. The perk system, gone. Well, not entirely. It's kind of just reworked to like just like one giant skill tree, but you don't have to do it in order. You just have to meet the prerequisites. It's more of a clusterfuck menu that lets you use a skill point to boost a special trait or an ability within said special trait. This in turn sort of removed the build aspect, since you kind of just put them all over the place at any given time, granted you've met those requirements. For me personally, I actually really dislike this because for the first time since Fallout 1 and 2, I had to actually look up a rough copy of a good build, because in this game, it kind of felt easy to fuck up your character. Not necessarily like in that they would be unplayable, but just not really fun. But that's probably just another
skill issue.
Another massive change was the decision to give the protagonist a voice, and I hate this shit. I think everyone does. I mean, this was kind of just miserable to get through. Not only does it make some instances feel drawn out, but then also in turn rework the whole dialogue and speech segment of this game for the worse. Not only do you only have a maximum of 4 responses to every single conversation, it doesn't even give you the whole context of what your character is gonna say. For example, there's this sarcastic option, and that could mean fucking anything. I hate that this is in the game because it's like, oh, I kind of want to be a smartass here, but like sometimes you want to be like smart, like, oh, let's crack a joke, but it's usually like insulting them, but sometimes it's not. I don't know. It just felt really inconsistent, and you just never knew what the hell was going to be said. But the last straw for this dialogue rework is the new cinematic camera angles they try and implement for key moments. This whole thing felt buggy and kind of forced, and half the time they would be looking like you wouldn't even be looking at them. I don't know. It was just weird. And also with this, I'd be spamming left click to like skip some dialogue, and I would accidentally shoot the person in front of me, like that I'm talking to, in the face. I know I can't be the only one who was doing that, but like this took a lot of getting used to. It did not feel natural. Another change is the whole entire health, rads, and action point system. Now there's a sprint button, which again, I don't think we really needed. I mean, I guess every game has it, but it did take some getting used to because action points were taken up by your sprint, and sometimes you'd be sprinting and then you turn a corner and it's like, oh, let me get into VATS, and it's like, oh shit, I have no VATS because I used all my action points sprinting. Rads seem to be much more of an annoyance in this game. Your maximum health would decrease the more rads you got, but to counteract this, health items healed you more and seemed way more abundant in this game. So just another thing to get used to and not necessarily bad. Gun and armor conditions completely got removed, which kind of took away from the survival element of the previous games, as well as injuries still being healed with the stim pack or also by waiting like 15 seconds. The combat is well refined to fit a more traditional first-person shooter element, which I enjoyed. Again, this is another one of the polarizing changes, but it kind of made it easier to go back to and less clunky, but still clunky somehow. I don't know. That's about it for the big changes to the meat and potatoes of a Fallout game, but aside from the insane jump in graphical detail and quality, and the combat kind of turning into Call of Duty, at its core, this is another Fallout experience. This game has a lot to offer in the content side of things, but more doesn't always mean better. I think the factions in this one are kind of weak. The Minutemen are the first one you meet up with, and although having a decent cause, all this motherfucker wants you to do is build and expand his settlements, and this is a feature that I just did not explore whatsoever in this game. I don't really like the whole micromanaging thing, I guess, unless it's on my fucking iPhone. But I do think this is the best depiction of the Brotherhood of Steel. They are just a full-blown force to be reckoned with the whole blimp. You know, you just get that quest. It's like, yo, what's this blimp? Let's go inspect it. And then it turns out being the Brotherhood of Steel, and they're just absolutely fucking badass in this game. I ended up siding with them for the end of this game, and I'm really glad I did. I feel like just being part of this big-ass militia that is just a full-blown military. This game also got some DLC. Nuka World and Automatrons were fine, both small, especially Auto, and Nuka World also sporting Andrew WK as a voice actor. Kind of badass. Nuka World aesthetically was one of the best ideas for a DLC, being an amusement park, kind of like this whole Zombieland, like Point Lookout to it. A lot of people hated it because it made you lead multiple sects of raiders, which I didn't have a problem with. I thought it was actually kind of cool, like seeing raiders like talk and not just be bad people. But what I didn't like was the straight up quest design. It starts off hot with you killing the leader of the raiders, which crowns you as a leader. But then you have one of the most ridiculous fetch quests of all time, being like, I think it's like 30 fucking items and none of which are marked in your map, and it's also a very broad area of the map, and that's where I was just like, fuck it, I'm not playing this DLC. I already wasn't really like super compelled in the first place, but this was just the nail in the coffin. However, I just have 3 words for you. Far fucking Harbor. This DLC rocks. After you free Nick Valentine in the main quest, so I know anyone else get like super uncomfortable by looking at his neck through like his body. It was fucking disgusting. Anyways, you're given an independent job to search for a missing girl, and it's quickly discovered that she left home to explore the synth refuge in the town of Far Harbor. I think this is the biggest DLC Bethesda has ever done in size and actual amount of content as well, and this was leaps and bounds my favorite thing about Fallout 4 by a landslide. This does so much for the game that I probably would have ranked this game very mid, but this really brought it up several points. This is the perfect story of searching for one thing and finding like 6 other things instead, each of which you get super invested in and forget why you're there in the first place, which is a telltale sign that you're playing a very good RPG. You're introduced to multiple sub-factions, I guess you can call them, and you choose which to side with, each having several quests amongst them, the Children of Adam and the Synth Refuge Camp and being the 2 big ones. The aesthetic takes a Lake Town vibe right on the docks, kind of reminded me of Stormalong from Flapjack, and there is just so much going on here and so much to do. I don't want to spoil anything here, but there's so much replayability with Fallout in and of itself, but I almost wish there was a way to like replay just this DLC and keep everything the same, because this DLC has so many different endings and so many different decisions to make and routes to take that it is just a very fun experience. It almost feels like a chore getting through Fallout 4 to the point where you can play this DLC because of how good this fucking DLC is. There's only one really rough part, and that being Dima's memories. I'm just going to show you like a little puzzle thing going on here. It's not even that it was annoying. Well, yes, it was annoying, but there was just like 5 of them and they took kind of a long time. I wasn't really fucking with it. Other than that, this is a perfect DLC. I will actually go as far and say this is the best DLC in Fallout. We went there. Back to the main game, which as you can tell, I wasn't exactly thrilled with. The whole skill point thing just makes you rethink how you're going to play Fallout and just does not play like Fallout 3 or New Vegas whatsoever. It is actually considerably different. And again, different does not mean bad. In a weird way, I would actually recommend this being, if you've never played a Fallout game, this is probably a good place to start because the combat's a little more simplified and VATs are also super fucking broken. If you go for a VATs build, like I got Kellogg's pistol and that thing just carried me through this game because I had a VATS build. The game introduced a much more lore accurate power armor that I also didn't bother with. I don't really like being slow, but you know, if you want to be a big tank guy who can just fuck everything up, you can do that and like, you know, min-max it as well. Apparently this game is really good for mods and the mod community kind of just like kicks ass. So that's pretty cool. I can always get down with that, but again, I'm not taking that into consideration for this ranking because I'm just vanilla and DLC only, and we're not going to talk about that, even though I'd love to play as Woody and whatever the fuck else I'm going to show on screen. I'm sure there's some crazy shit going on that'd be fun to experience, but it's still a fun Fallout game. The main story kind of gets like dystopian, this whole like Blade Runner vibe going on with the synths. The synths were a pretty decent faction at best, I'll give it that. But I want to emphasize one more time, I would rank this lower if it weren't for Far Harbor, and that's the only reason this game is getting a B tier. Asking someone to rank Fallout 76 is sort of like asking someone to rank like Fortnite. Do I rank it for the double pump, non-sweaty build golden era of the game? Or the K-pop, Demon Hunter, and Simpsons era of the game? And for Fallout 76, do I rank it for the unplayable, no NP in sight era? Or the modern, lukewarm, half-baked, yet somewhat more enjoyable than the launch version of the game? You know, not one time, especially during playing Fallout games, or any single player game for that matter, have ever been like, man, This would be so dope if I could play this with someone else. Yet Fallout 76 still exists. Being the 76th installment in the franchise, Bethesda was trying to spice things up and really take a chance by giving the Wasteland internet access. And the result is a mixed bag of reactions. I don't think I need to bore you with another history lesson behind this game and its dreadful launch, or the infamous canvas bag debacle, which you can learn more about if you watch my Death of the Collector's Edition video after this one. But 76 has come a long way, and playing it for the first time in 2025, I seem to be getting spoiled compared to the garbage that was served in 2018. But not by much. This just isn't for me. I feel like this is a grind fest that has no end in sight when you consider that this is taking a single player game, as a matter of fact, a game that has always been single player, and giving it the multiplayer and like live service treatment. Like, could you imagine if you heard like, I don't know, God of War was getting a live service game? That's basically what's going on here. I mean, this game has a shop, and for a microsecond there, even had a fucking battle royale. You cannot make this shit up. I just don't know who was asking for this. The quests are dull, and I don't care about anything that's going on. And since this game is multiplayer, VATS also is way different, that it doesn't slow time at all, and the whole experience just doesn't feel like Fallout. They did revert some of the changes of Fallout 4, like there's no talking protagonist, which, you know, huge W there. And also, speaking of talking, you can actually see what you're gonna say and have more than 4 options about what you're going to respond to. So kudos there, but I mean, like, if that's the very least we're getting, it's still a total fucking L. But aside from the microtransactions in an already $40 game, the last straw for me was when I leveled up and I got like a pack, and I opened that pack and it had like a perk that I would randomly kit. I mean, what the fuck? How out of touch are you? Pack openings for any game or loot boxes, I thought that was way behind us, but this is 2025, and not being able to choose unless I'm buying it probably to have the ability I want to have is fucking ridiculous for a game that was originally single player nonetheless. I'll never touch this game, and I ended up refunding it on Steam. This is a detail. Real quick, just like a shameless plug, Fallout London, this shit's badass. I'm barely playing it right now. Probably shouldn't have included it, but this does everything right. Basically kind of what Fallout 4 should have been, and also took us to a place that we've never seen in the post-nuclear, war. The traditional leveling's back. It's free to play. It's super easy to install. I think the devs worked really hard, and you should definitely show them some love because this is a really fun experience. I barely even scratched the surface, but I know I'm going to like it more than Fallout 4, but again, Far Harbor does exist, and I don't think I can rank it up there with New Vegas. I'm really enjoying my playthrough so far, and like you can just tell TLC was put into this game, unlike 76. Not to say Fallout 4 didn't have TLC. I think that game's still okay, but this is just a super in-depth world with so much to do for a free experience, assuming you already have Fallout 4. I mean, you gotta at least give this a shot. I'm giving it a B tier at the very least. I probably shouldn't even put on this list just because it's not made by, official licensed game, but whatever. Go check this out. I like to cap things off by talking about the Fallout TV show, which actually I had watched before playing any of these. I watched it when it first aired, and this shit was fucking awesome. I want to start it off by saying that I watched this show as someone who had never played a Fallout game ever. I had no attachment to the show, and I really enjoyed it. And even after playing all these games, I think I like it even more now because I think the flavor of Fallout was captured very well with it. I think it's just objectively a good show, even if you're not into video games. If you just want a good ass show with a good narrative, I'm super fucking excited for season 2. And in turn, I'm giving the show an A tier. But yeah, here's my list. This is every Fallout game ranked. Again, as someone who never played it until this video, what'd you think? What do you hate the most? This ranking probably pissed a lot of you off, but fuck it, let me have it in the comments. Let me hear what you like, what you don't like. Hey, if you made it this far in the video, maybe consider subscribing because a lot of you aren't, and it would really help out the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. If you want to hear me play every single Metal Gear game or every Lord of the Rings game, click on screen now. And if you liked, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. And thank you so much for watching.